Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Elinor.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on your show. It's great to be on the other side of the microphone.
Yes. So we wanted to talk to you because you have a really interesting approach in actually how you came around to being a career consultant in the construction industry. So tell us, before you started doing your own career coaching in the industry, what were you doing?
Not as much as I do now, that is for sure. But going back, I did my undergraduate in architecture, and I found that whilst I am a creative, I'm not one in a conventional sense. And I got a lot of frustration from the design process. So I said, okay, what else can I do? And obviously, based on the career intelligence that I had at the time, it looked like a master's degree. So I started my master's in construction management, and it was everything at once and just generated more and more questions for me. So I entered into the construction industry and I started working on commercial construction, so front end project delivery. And, I was even at the 5-year mark or the 4-year mark, people would be looking to me and saying, hey, Elinor, you're so successful, or you're having such a great run at your career. And to me, inside, I was still like, I still feel a bit lost. And I know that where I am today, it's not enough, but I could never really put my finger on how that would actually look like. But from the outside looking in, it was a successful career. So I did, I was always someone who I always needed to do more, because that was then, I'm a maximalist. So I thought, if I keep on diversifying my experiences, I will find that something. And it is, of course, all these little experiences which led me to, that pivotal moment in time when it all changed for me, when I went down the thought leadership route.
Okay. When you say that you still feel lost, can you tell us more about that?
Now I have clarity. Now I have absolute decision as to what I wanted, because then, when I felt lost and when I felt confused, and when, I was someone who, I had to make a decision, there would be a Vox poll. Everyone give me your opinion. And that was because I didn't have vision. Vision is the game changer, because there was a point in time in my career when I couldn't answer the question, what do you want? I drew blanks. My answer was, I want to work on site, and I was already doing that. So what, is that going to last my whole career? It wasn't enough. So I actually took the time out of the day-to-day and went down a deep introspection of asking myself the then difficult questions. What do I actually want? What am I trying to achieve? What is it that, I want to call into my life? And through that process of, for me, it was journaling, did I discover the first version, the skeleton of my vision. And when I actually saw that vision, because the mere fact that you can see something for yourself, it's already part of your metaphysical reality, I started believing in it. And from that point in time, the universe aligns people and opportunities to make that happen. I wasn't concerned with the how. I was certainly concerned with the what and the why. So really giving birth to that vision and realizing it and knowing that this is what I'm going to do really eliminated or diluted that sense of not having direction and feeling so confused all the time.
What was that like, though, deciding to take that course of introspection?
Difficult. It was, not difficult as in I would never do it again. I do it all the time. And I am cognizant that I'm someone who, I'm an only child. So I spend a lot of time by myself anyway. I'm great by myself. So it wasn't a difficult process to ask myself questions, but I was surprised first and foremost at the answers that I was getting, because it was in complete differentiation to everything that I knew, or everything that I once thought I knew, and everything that I once wanted. And it would be going against the grain and, trying to do things differently. And that was when it all came crashing down. And I remember speaking about it to a mentor at the time, who is not a mentor anymore, but I was speaking about that process of unraveling to the mentor, and he was saying, well, that's not for you. Like, how can this vision possibly be for you? You just stick down the straight and narrow, and in 20 years time, maybe you'll have it, but also maybe not. That was the difficult point where I externalized it and someone actually discounted it completely. But
wow.
know that your vision is yours when it just comes back with a roaring ferocity. And those people have to leave your life for a reason, because they're just holding you back.
I'm really curious about the introspection questions, because I know I've had periods where I'm like, am I living out my purpose in life? Am I, doing what I'm meant to be doing? And so what sorts of questions did you ask yourself to kind of help provide you with some clarity around your purpose?
That's a great question. One was of confronting one at the time was, if tomorrow was the last day, what would I want people to have said about me? And at that point in time, well, no one knew me. I had no value proposition or contribution to society as a whole. I would be gone and that would be it. Mm-hmm. And then what have I left behind? Absolutely nothing. And it was also about, what do I actually want to spend my time on? So one of the first questions that I asked myself was, what would my perfect day look like? Like blue sky thinking, open checkbook, no parameters. And my perfect day looked nothing like the one that I was experiencing or thought that I would continue to experience. So in realizing my perfect day, I realized, hang on, how can I, what kind of career, what kind of life do I need to build in order to have this perfect day? Because the route that I'm on, that's not going to facilitate this. But obviously my perfect day, well, I have to think, why is this perfect? Why is it that I want this? What am I actually trying to uncover here? And it all came down to freedom.
Freedom is huge.
Yes. So was there a big shift in shift in what you were currently doing to what you'd like to be doing?
Absolutely. I was the most conventional person of them all. And that's not what people look at now, at, how bold and confident, and I do things. There's a book, there's a podcast, like what you're doing. You're constantly adding things to your universe. I was the most conventional person, and I thought that I would go to uni, I would get a fantastic job, I would crack the 6-figure mark, and I would do this forever. That was the convention. And I thought, I'm just going to climb to the top. I had no idea what the top was. I had no idea what it meant. And I certainly couldn't tell you why I actually wanted that. And that was also part of that introspection, was realizing, hang on, I'm following conventions that I didn't set. They were set for me. That was an expectation. That was a limiting externality that I internalized. But instead of just doing that and actually saying that, your future is just a straight and narrow and how dare you deviate from it, have I realized, hang on, there is a person here. Who am I first and foremost? What is it that I actually love doing the most? Speaking and thinking and mentoring. And then how can I actually create a life and lifestyle and a brand and assets around that? And that's why, some of my days are so diverse now. I've got mentoring in mastermind sessions in the morning, maybe jumping on a podcast like I have now, and then you're recording, then you're talking about someone, with a collaboration. You end up, you create the kind of work that you want to do. And that's what I love about what I do. I create the type of work that I want to work on, whether that's an event, I want to do a workshop, see, not in 2020, but soon. You get to do this. And that's what I love about it.
I'm curious, what about those first steps when you were leaving the conventional path? Can you talk to us about those days?
Very, very scary, because you don't really know anyone. I didn't know anyone in the entrepreneurial world. No one in my family was, an entrepreneur. I mean, my dad has always worked for himself. He was never a 9-to-5 person. So, to some extent I've seen it, but no one was venturing down the path that I didn't even know was possible. And at first it was imperfect action, especially when it came to the construction coach. I didn't know what it would look like, but I knew there was something there. So at first it was small steps of imperfect action, but that had to happen in that way, because I'll tell you the story of how the game changed for me. I went to a LinkedIn event because I'm like, hang on, I'm trying to market something. I don't know what it is, but I need to learn LinkedIn, because conventionally people start with the tactics. You don't start with the tactics. And it was at that event when I met my now mentor, Ron Malhotra. And Ron showed me, as he calls it, the third door of having a career. You can be a traditional employee, you can be a traditional entrepreneur, So where you have a product, for example, Nike, and then the business owner is then discovered and realized, and this is who they are. Or you can go down the thought leadership route of entrepreneurship, which is when the person, the individual, is at the nucleus. They are at the core of their business. They have a very distinct and dominant brand. And then their businesses and brand assets are an extension of that. And to be a thought leader, it's about getting people to think differently. It's about shifting their paradigm, shifting their worldviews, and being very unconventional in your thinking. And as I went down that path, of course, with Ron, it was always evident to me that I was always meant to be a thought leader. This is exactly what I was meant to do. But did I know that at the time? Absolutely not. At the time, I had to trust the process. And that is something that can be very difficult to do, but it is the most necessary. And I still do. I trust the process completely because I know the North Star. I know where I'm going. Do I know exactly how I'm going to get there? Absolutely not. But I know, the next 90 days, and I'm trusting the process. Nor am I expecting immediate reward or gratification. I have a fantastic ability to defer that. Because when people, they might do one thing. I put out one episode and I don't have 100,000 downloads, so I'm going to call it a day. You defer that gratification. And they were the, key attributes to my person, which really allowed me to push through in those first and formative days, especially when, people start looking at you saying, oh, you're trying something new, or who are you to do that? You start getting a lot of eyeballs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Besides the eyeballs, you also have that internal voice in your head. How were you able to get over that internal voice telling you, hey, who are you? You don't have enough experience in this industry. How can you step out of this bubble?
That's a fantastic question. And the box broke down over time, and I'm so glad that it did. But for a long time, it was like, do I leave the box? What happens if I do? But in all honesty, I don't have the ego to say that I did it all by myself. Ron was the most imperative person on that journey because he is someone who is larger than life and one of my most favorite people in the world. But he helped me to think differently. He showed me the avenues to think differently. And then it's like turning the light bulb on all the time. That's what it was with Ron. And of course, in the first part of, that process and understanding, this different world of thought leadership and this model of business, there was a lot of investment first and foremost into my thinking and into actually my own belief system. Because if I didn't believe that it was possible for me, then you would quit. You wouldn't actually pursue. So yes, there were times where I'm like, oh, I'm actually going to do it. But I always have faith. I choose faith over doubt because carrying doubt around, it's too expensive. And I always thought, what is the alternative? To go back and do nothing? To go back and play small? To go back and not give myself a chance? Now, of course, I still get that voice every time, new idea, bigger and better. Can I? Hang on, yes, I can. Because I've also proven to myself, and I also know that the alternative of doing nothing, that is 100% not an option in my world.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. In it, I know you talked about a previous mentor. Now you have Ron, who's your current mentor. Why do you believe working with a mentor is so important for individuals?
It is the most imperative. If you value time, then it is the most imperative way in order to progress, because everything that I've achieved working with my mentor, I don't even know if it would take me 10 years, if I would have even achieved it, if it wouldn't even be in my world of possibility, if it would have been in my view, in my vision. I wouldn't have figured it out by myself, let alone to overcome the challenges faster. And I wasn't going to sit around and spend 10, 20 years trying to figure it out and then execute. No, I want to learn quickly. I want to bypass the time. I want to learn from the person who has my results. And that is the thing with mentoring. When I saw Ron had the results that I wanted. So how can I get that? And will I do whatever it takes? Absolutely. Because otherwise I would have been going around in circles. I would have been playing small. I would have been playing the same game as everyone else and not having the achievement, nor really identifying my true identity. And it does take a mentor to hold up a mirror and show you what you're actually capable of, because we are our own worst people to do that because of that voice.
And it sounds like this mentor, has helped you unlock your true potential And so I'm really curious, there's a lot of people that you hear a lot in business about finding a mentor, attaching yourself to a mentorship program and that sort of thing. But what characteristics do you believe are important for a mentor to encompass?
It's a fantastic question because many people pre-qualify themselves to be a mentor, but all what they're doing is regurgitating their own experiences of the past and actually passing that on to someone else without actually thinking, what does this person really need? What does this person actually want? So when I look at mentors or people that I will take advice from, first is, do I want their results? If I don't want their results, then I also don't want their opinions, and I certainly don't want their advice. And if their results are what they want, well, okay, do they actually have a way in which they could help me get there? Because it's easy to, not everyone can show someone a pathway. It's because you also have to move people through the pathway. And there is a lot of mindset that works with that. You can't just tell someone, yeah, go start a business. This is what I've done. Well, not if their self-image can't actually see themselves as a business owner. And the second is, do I actually want to work very closely with this person? Do I actually want to give this person space in my life in order to mentor me? Because it's a two-way commitment. Mentor isn't there to just give you 100% all the time. You have to bring a lot to the table as well. It's a 50-50 relationship when you really look at it. But the first is actually the results. And for people who are so invested in your success, and you do need that in the first place, because again, when people come into a mentoring program, they don't come like a finished product. There's a lot of work that you have to do on them. So you really want to be able to work with that person. But first and foremost, it is their results.
Mm-hmm. But the way you crossed paths, though, had to do with the work that you were putting in to begin with, right? And so they kind of showed up at the right time. I imagine that people listening to your story are thinking, wow, it had to be hard to let go of that other mentor. Can you talk about that process and what it was to say, you know what, that person's not right for me? Because I think a lot of people just hold on to relationships out of respect or deference or being scared, those kinds of things. So I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a fantastic question. And you're right. It's not just about a mentor. It's a friend. It could be even family who is holding you back. It's not necessarily, that mentoring, but in that moment in time, it was very hard. It was confronting because you spend a lot of time with this person, opening up, achieving, and you really think that they were invested in you. But what they were actually invested in was their vision of you, not your authentic vision. And going back, if I can just add a point to what we spoke about, finding the right mentor, it is very important that a mentor doesn't override your dreams with their own. The mentor has to actually be able to see your vision and who you are and then make that a reality. It's not about, hey, Melissa, I think you should do this, 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 and this because that's what I think is great. You may not want a bar of that, and that's fine. It's a non-issue. So that relationship, that mentoring relationship really had to end because they were completely overriding me and discounting me as a person. And it was very confronting at the time, and it does hurt, and it did hurt a lot. But for me, it was a clean cut because they weren't going to be part of my future. And that had to happen because if I'd held on to that person, Ron wouldn't have the space to come into my life. I had to make space. It's the same when you want to buy something new, you can't just add and add. There's just no more space for something to come into your life. So of course, at the time, did I know that was happening? No, but I trusted the process, and I had enough self-belief in myself to say, Elinor, you're fine. You're not dependent. You're not incompetent. You will always figure it out. I always knew that enough about myself to know that, look, you'll figure it out. And it was, it had to happen. And only in retrospect do I know how badly that needed to happen. And there is this meme or quote on the internet is that you don't hear the conversations that people have behind your back, but the universe does. And I really found that quite powerful because sometimes we don't know the reason why people have to leave, but the higher powers universe, it certainly does.
I'm just so impressed because anytime, that people are considering or contemplating a career change or going back to school, we are often our own worst critic. We have these limiting beliefs that we can't. So I'm curious how or what strengths emerged for you that maybe were hidden that you didn't know that you possessed that allowed you to kind of make this shift?
For as long as I can remember, I've never really concerned myself with what other people think. But what I did was I thought, hang on, I have to get their opinions because they're my friends and they're my family and I need to. So then I fell into that category of trying to get consensus rather than actually authentically believe in myself. So what I was doing when I was asking people for permission, I was actually going against my own natural grain and I was suffocating my soul in the process. Because I am someone who, when I set a direction and that's where we're going, that's it. My mind is locked and loaded and I have tunnel vision and that's where we are going. That is what is happening. So I knew that about my person, that, I could really be quite independent and headstrong. And, a big part of my natural person and natural disposition is confidence. I show up with a lot of confidence, but that is too much for other people. So, I was intimidating. So what I would do, I would dull myself down completely. I would not be confident. I would not be overpowering. I would not be the automatic leader in a room because of how other people were experiencing me. But then I realized that's not my problem. That is their problem. That is a reflection of their own self-image. That has nothing to do with me. So, the last year has really been about being more of who I am rather than being less of who I am. And of course, by doing that, you polarize others, but I'm not vanilla and I'm not planning to be everyone's favorite person. That's never why we do what we do.
Wow, that was just so powerful because I'm with you. Like I'm getting to that mindset of just I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. But talk about that period of time where you were trying to make yourself smaller, trying to go against the grain. What was that like for you?
There was always that nagging feeling. That was a great question. When you kind of want to do something and you have that nagging feeling, and the more that you suppress it, the more that it becomes louder. And what was happening, I was suppressing a lot of those parts of myself. And then when, there were situations when I wanted to express myself and I couldn't, I would be frustrated, but I didn't know why. I couldn't tell you why. I would just be really crabby with family, or I would have a bad day and you would blame it on work. You could never actually pinpoint it. But what was happening, it was coming out in different expressions. And I wasn't paying attention then to my energy, but it was my energetic response to not being who I needed to be and how I needed to show up. And I remember the first time that I met Ron, I was so intimidated. I couldn't even look him in the eye. It wasn't because of him. It was because I didn't feel like I was enough. And I reflect on that a lot because I remember that feeling. It's like, I felt really bad for me in that time. I didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy that I went up to a person and I felt not enough. Like, why does it have to be that case? It certainly doesn't, and it certainly isn't the case anymore. But it constantly felt like the soul was having a pillow over it and you were just suffocating it and you weren't ever really coming up for air.
City and I are huge proponents of counseling, and we're always working on building ourselves up. And I know personally I've struggled with that feeling of self-worth or lack thereof. And I know that it takes incredible amounts of work to push through that. Can you talk a little bit about some of the work that you did to kind of push through that mindset that you had?
As I said before, a big part of it was working with Ron. And when you see someone who makes it possible, then that by default expands your world of possibility. But I spend a lot of time journaling. Journaling is my outlet. Journaling for me is what allows me to unpack the conversations that happened in my mind. So I'm not carrying them around like head trash and replaying it over and over again. I will journal. If I'm feeling anxious about something, okay, why am I feeling anxious? And then I rewrite the script, because when you're sitting there physically writing out, I'm amazing, I am brilliant, you're amazing, you're brilliant, and you keep on telling that to yourself again and again in your own handwriting with your own momentum, How can I not believe it? So journaling for me is my number one outlet. It is where I spend a lot of time calling in my dreams, constantly working through my mindset. And this has to happen every day because, people shower every day. I hope they do. It is something that happens by default, but they don't work on their mindset every day because they do it once or twice and they think they're good. Well, you shower every day. Why is it the same applicable as a daily habit to your mindset? So journaling for me is the outset, and it is really what got me to where I was today, because if it wasn't for calling in my vision, actually figuring it out on paper, then I wouldn't be where I am today. And I did the very scary thing of rereading my journals from 2017, and it was getting like a window into my person and what Elinor was scared by and worried by. And I just wish I could go back and tell her, hey, everything's going to be more than fine. But I really loved that experience. It was traveling backwards in time.
That's something we've definitely done ourselves on the podcast a couple of times, going back to my 12-year-old brain, a couple other journals and things. What did you find in that journal? Did you find like a recurring theme or something that came out that just spoke to you now in your present self?
That's a great question. It was more that in a lot of the entries started with, I'm not too sure, I'm not too sure, I'm good. Like, I will do this. I will do this against all odds. There was always that little bit of a pep talk, a little bit of, my vision, Elinor, it's okay. It won't happen immediately. It won't happen now. There was a lot of reassurance that was also going on, and there was a lot, and there still is, and until the end of time, there will be trust in the universe. Trust that we are connections and extensions of the universe, and we weren't put on this earth to struggle, to not have what we want, to not have the most fulfilling career for yourself, to not deliver value, to not have anything that you want. So there was a lot of reassurance in the pages, and it wasn't that self-doubt was a common theme. It was about, can I do this? Can I actually get there? It wasn't doubt. It was more that, this goal, this is huge, and I've never done it before. But hang on, most things that I haven't done before. So there was always that balance of, I'm scared, but hang on, Elinor, you got this. You do.
I'm really curious because I think, it sounds like you had Ron kind of served as your champion. And I'm curious, what did he say or do to empower you?
Many things. I remember many, many distinct conversations. It was, a lot about mindset, and a lot about the thought leadership program that I did go on was about identifying who you are as a person, your macro and your micro. And the greatest gift that someone can give you is your own true identity. And when you actually see yourself, this is genetically on a granular level, on a spiritual level, this is who I am. It is the most powerful thing in the world to be then all of who you are, to then represent all of who you are. And you actually realize how powerful and how capable you are as a person, that you weren't created to be lesser than. You weren't created to be incapable or incompetent. No, but it all comes through our decisions, our actions, that first and foremost is informed by our world of possibility. And of course, at the start, Ron would show me these scenarios, these dreams, saying you can do it. And it's true, I can. I had qualms about releasing a book. Like, I'm not an author. But so what? You don't start as an author and then you release a book. So it was always showing me the path of possibility, and also really proving to me that, to have what other people don't have, you also have to do what other people don't do. And that really requires you in the first place to get out of your way. But when you know your person and you know your vision, they're two very powerful combinations. You constantly keep on moving.
Speaking of your book, I actually have it right here with me. And so there were a couple of things on here, but in the beginning of the book, you said something that I thought was really insightful, especially about, you're a young person. We're relatively young, or I'll speak for myself. But you talk about how limiting a framework it is to pick your work based on a job title. It's like saying the job title gives a young individual the full scope of what their career path involves. Far from it, right? So what I liked about that was just, you're so right. It's so limiting, and we put this pressure on young people, and yourself being a young person. Can you talk more about why that's such a limitation?
When you were reading that out loud, it sounded really good.
I know.
And I pick up my book as well sometimes, like, this is great. But thank you. And it's so heartwarming to see a copy of my book in different corners of the world. When I graduated, or when I was going through university, the only framework of opportunity that we were shown in the construction industry is go be a project manager. Mm-hmm. What does that actually tell me about the life I want, the dreams I want, the type of value I want to have, the type of people that I want to connect with? What does that have to do with my strengths, with my natural disposition? Do I even want that? Or am I falling into a system? And this is, I don't know how it is in other industries, if it might be, if there are similarities, but I know in construction, people just get funneled towards one thing. And what does it actually tell you? What is, a project manager? It is a set of skill sets and responsibilities. Is that it? Is that all that you want to do? And when people fall into those categories, they're not actually thinking, well, why don't I become a podcast host? Why don't I become a thought leader? What about if I could be a business owner? I could be anything. It's not about the titles. Like, we fall into those categories, but first and foremost, it's what value do I have to bring to the world? That's what people aren't thinking about. Why am I here? How can I actually serve others in the first place? Like, what you're doing, this is serving other people. No one's paying you to do this podcast. You're doing it for free. It's out of your own time. You are adding value to other people. You weren't thinking about yourself in the first place when you were, wanting to do this. That's coming out of a place of serving others. But you probably weren't thinking, I'm going to be a podcast host and then I'll figure it out. It's the other way around. But people are thinking in such conventional terms and conventional frameworks of titles that they're just blinkering out opportunities and actually thinking about the value that they want to add. What is their actual point of passion? What actually makes you come alive? I mean, some people probably hate podcasting, but they're like, I have to do it because the business said so, whatever it is, whatever excuse. They fall into those categories. It doesn't make sense. You first and foremost have to do that introspection to understand your passion, your purpose. What is your natural disposition? What is your zone of excellence rather than your zone of incompetence? And then build the brand, the business, the career, the vehicle around that, not the other way around.
I like that. And it's interesting that you brought introspection, because I wanted to circle back to that, because you mentioned that one of the questions you asked was, what would your ideal day look like, or ideal work situation look like? Do you believe that you've achieved where you'd like to go?
I'm still getting there, because it keeps on growing, and it is an affliction of people with high achievement orientation. We get to where we are and we don't spend a lot of time there. But the thing is also, where I am today, I've already lived that out in my mind time and time and time again, right? So it's always like, okay, I'm here, and right now I am so grateful. I wouldn't trade this, because this is everything that I once wanted and once that I was calling in. So I don't neglect or reject or discount anything today, but I know it's not the final destination. So will I ever be where I want to be, like that final place? No, probably not. If it means I spend my whole life exploring what that could look like, then that's what I will do. But it's also about that diversity. It's not about, okay, I've set it up like this now, this is what I have to do forever. You can do anything, anywhere, anytime, with anyone with an internet connection. So it's constantly expanding and evolving. And I think that's what's also exciting and fuels my ambition.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, though, with that vision that you have and moving forward, do you find it difficult to stay in the present and be mindful on a day-to-day basis?
It can be. And that's, I am a dreamer, but I have certainly learned how to have 2 feet planted firmly on the ground, but have my head in the clouds as well. Because you can't just always be up in the clouds. Nothing ever gets done. But if you're constantly stuck with the doing, well, you're not growing, you're not evolving. So it is that, very fine balance. But gratitude really helps ground yourself in the present, because then you really look at everything that you do have today and everything that is yet to come. So it is certainly a balance. And what I've really had to learn is not to move by the present achievement so quickly, like to actually allow myself to also feel that, hey, I earned this. This is success. This is, exactly what I was hoping for, and not to say, no, it's fine. It's, it's not much. Really like deeply learn to appreciate that. And that's what certainly keeps me going in the present towards that big picture vision.
We talk a lot about celebrating small wins or wins along the way and doing all of that. What do you do to celebrate and acknowledge those accomplishments as you're going on your path?
Oh, well, when I released my book, I opened a bottle of mum at 12 o'clock because that's it was suitable. First and foremost, it is gratitude to the people who have been part of that, and of course to myself and the universe to really, say thank you, because if you don't have gratitude and if you're not grateful for what you do have, more of that won't actually show up in your life. So first and foremost, it's acknowledging it, and it could be sometimes giving myself time to just be and not have to constantly do or dream or think. Time is the most important gift for me. So I do sometimes, allow myself to, okay, you just do whatever you want. So I give myself that liberty, or it can be, a physical thing that I wanted to get if I achieved this as well.
I just love the energy you're bringing to this podcast. I can just feel it. And so I'm assuming that you bring this high energy and excitement to your clients and stuff like that. But I was curious. I mean, we talk a lot about, this mentorship or this construction in career, but can this methodology that you apply be applied to all aspects of life?
100%. Thought leadership. I'm a master facilitator with Ron because of the results that I have achieved. It's not just applicable to the construction industry. Ron is from the wealth industry, wealth advisory. So it is certainly a model that is picked up and applied to anyone from any industry, any walks of life.
What do you enjoy most about your profession?
I love so what I bring is the energy,
I can see that.
As you correctly picked up. But I love that you create these transformations and so many aha moments in people, and you actually show them what is possible, and they generate this intense confidence. And what they do is they fall out of conventional thinking patterns of saying, I only have to be this, or I will forever have to struggle, or I can only do this. That's what I love the most, is actually shattering those boxes for people and actually getting them to move out of their own way and see a whole new world of possibility, and how when you really, buckle down, have some discipline for even 1, 2, 3 years, the results are phenomenal in a short amount of time. They compound so quickly. But that's from a mentoring business perspective. But from building itself, what I loved about it was not so much, the work that you do, but the person that you became in the process. Because being in construction, it's very diversified. You deal with legalities, ethics, finances, people, all the people of different walks of life. And for people who really want it, you can actually grab that opportunity and become so immensely well-rounded that, not many other industries and professions afford that for people.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that Melissa brought up that question, because one of the things that did strike me in your book was that even though you were looking at building and constructing your career through the lens of construction, it really felt like a lot of the points you were making there were much more universal to other aspects. And I think in one of them, I want to pull that one up real quick. You talk about talent not being the problem. You say, let me pull it up here real quick. Should have had it up. Talent isn't the issue. Obscurity is. You can be the absolute best, but if the right people aren't seeing that, you're not moving fast enough in your career. And I was like, noted because that has to do with just everything that you have on there. And so even though it's a construction lens, I really do applaud you in the universality. Is that even a word?
I don't know. We'll go with it. Just go with
We'll
it.
go with it, with the universal aspects that are in your book.
Thank you. And, that was not, of course it has the construction lens. I do stay in my own lane. I'm not that established in order to write a global career book, but of course it has that application for people at differentiating levels, because as a thought leader, we don't write for people who are 26 and working at this job. Like, we don't base it on demographics. We base our content and what we do on psychographics. And, the book was written for people who, regardless of where they are in their career, they would certainly be able to take something out of it and apply it to wherever and, whatever stage they are at. And that was the intention. And then, moments like this where I get this feedback, it's like, okay, Elinor was freaking out in April, actually was onto something.
No, I just love it because being young, and I'm going to go with Cydia, being young, right? We just kind of keep our head down and we're just thinking, okay, this is the career I'm on. I got to keep going forward. Does it tick all the boxes for me? No, but that's okay. It pays the bills. But what I love about what you're bringing in, the message that you're bringing in is you can have more. You can have, still be paying the bills and have all those box ticked and, be engaged, feel fulfilled. And I love that. So thank you.
I think there's two types of people in this world: those who don't want to do more, be more, have more. And there are those people who want to do more, be more, and have more. And I'm certainly a maximalist. I mean, I openly say, of course I want more. Why wouldn't I? And it's not, it doesn't come from a place of arrogance or bragging or anything. It's, I earn it and I work for it. Why wouldn't I? Who said that you have to have one career path and that's it? I mean, who actually ever walked up to you and told you that? Probably no one.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is awesome. And I've so enjoyed this. And so I would just like to start off by asking you one of our two signature questions that we ask all of our guests. The first one is, looking back, what would you tell your younger self?
I've been doing a lot of this because I'm turning 30 very soon. And
Baby.
Very much so.
Someone who was turning 25. I mean, what is that?
Right.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about that question. What would I tell 21-year-old Elinor? It would be to stop thinking about what other people think, because they're actually not thinking. If you look at the results in their life, there aren't any. They're not concerned about you. Let's start with that. I would tell Elinor to always, if you want to do something, do it. There will always be, people, i.e. friends, family, and fools, who will tell you that you can't, but you can't sacrifice that. And as soon as you can, find out your true identity and then be all of that, because that's what changes the game. And forever, you don't need a lot of people in your life. You only need a handful of really good ones, and stick to, what you want to be doing. Don't fall into the categories of other people. And, for me, it's always been something like, I can't stand going for coffees, for example. It's such a waste of time. I have to drive there, drive back, sit there for 4 hours. People want their problem solved for free. And there's lots of things that I don't like doing, and you would do them because you have to make other people happy. So stop doing that.
Good answer.
I like
Agreed.
that very much. Looking forward, what one wish do you have for yourself on your current?
That's a great question too. I wish for Elinor, who is entering her 30s, to keep on exploring her potential, to never stop, and to leave no stone unturned, creating your impact and creating the value that the world needs. It's only going to get bigger and better, and everything that you have been working for in your 20s has been serving the runway, and you get to actually now experience more of that and take off into it.
I think so. I think your 30s are going to be amazing.
Thank you.
30, and she already has all this knowledge. Like, what the hell are we doing here, Cydia? Like, we should.
We're learning.
You can learn more about Elinor or grab her book, Constructing Your Career, on her website, elinormoshe.com. We'll link this information on our website. Who has supported or mentored you? What tough questions do you need to ask yourself? Post your tough, introspective questions in our private Facebook community. We want to thank our producer and music director, Ron Johnson. This has been an Astronomicus DMR production. Thank you for listening. Remember, it's never too late and you're right on time.